Here we are at the WBI Wachusett Business Incubator for the class on drone. It's our Drone 101 class. And we have Robert Barbarian, who's an expert, a really great guy, but an expert on drones, a drone certified person, and also just works in drones every day. So he's a great guy to have to learn and to be teaching this class, but you're going to learn a lot from this class. We ask if you have questions to ask him at the end, but I'm going to turn this over to Robert now to present this course, and thank you for coming to the WBI. Robert.
You're very welcome. Hello, everyone. I am Robert Barbarian, come to you from the Wachusett Business Incubator. I'm a local business owner that primarily deals with drone usage and also various different media. I've been a drone enthusiast for over 10 years, and I've had my business for over 5 years now. I am a certified drone pilot, and for those 5 years, what this course as a high level is going to encompass is various different topics related to drones, and then we'll take some questions at the end. I'll start by saying what this course is. This course is a high-level comprehensive overview of things, but it will deal with a lot of very specific things as well. And what this course is not is a preparation course for what is known as the Part 107 exam. And that is the FAA administered exam in order to be a commercial drone pilot here in the United States. And so we will not be going into anything specific about the exam, but there will be topics that we do cover that will relate to it. So what we'll do is we'll start with a little bit of history with drones, or what are more professionally known as UAVs, or unmanned aerial vehicles. The traditional sense of a drone with 4 propellers did not start in the mid-1800s. In the mid-1800s in Austria, UAVs were in the form of balloons, and the military mainly used them not only for as a weapon, but also as a surveillance tool as well. And I'll paraphrase the history. Fast forward to 1935, we have the development of the first modern drone, and can't say where that's from, where that originated from, but that was in 1935. Excuse me. And fast forward to 1955 was the begin of the Vietnam War era, and that saw the development of 3,000 military drones that the U.S. used in that war. And they primarily used as weapons and surveillance instruments. And then we fast forward to the 2000s, especially the early 2000s, where drones had become more prominent. Starting off with things like evaluating crops, and also in the use of border surveillance around our U.S. borders. By 2013, drones have become very much commercially available now. Now you could order a drone from Amazon and have it delivered to your house and have fun with it. And then and now, drones come in all different shapes and sizes, and we'll get into that as we go forward with some of the different sizes or form factors of drones, and we have an array of them to show you. And I guess I'll start with a small fun fact here. As of 2021, we had 900,000 registered drone pilots, and as of now, in 2023, we have over 1 million. And that's not to say everybody has to be registered. And that would be the best way to start this, by saying registered and unregistered is a good high-level way of starting this. why would you have to register a drone? Well, if you're going to operate in a commercial fashion, you will have to register your drone for usage. If you have a business and the business is making revenue, you have to register the drone according to the FAA rules. And the main factor in registering the drone is characterized by weight. And in this case, anything that is above 0.55 pounds is deemed for registration. Anything at that weight and below does not need to be registered. Whether you're an enthusiast or hobbyist or a commercial pilot. So 0.55 pounds and up, registered. Below that, don't need to register. And in this course, I will make a lot of references to the drone company DJI. They have the biggest market share. So there will be a lot of examples by using DJI drones and showing some of the DJI drones as well. Okay, so UAV, unmanned aerial vehicles, as we call them. And actually, let's talk a little bit about the recreational flyer. Okay, what we just talked about. As a recreational flyer, now in certain states, not every state, you will have to register under a program called TRUST. It is an acronym. I don't know what it stands for, but you will have to register it. And why is that? Well, it is a good way to keep track of who's flying drones in the sky, whether it's recreationally or commercially. So you will have to take a test, rudimentary test, on some drone knowledge. And as far as being a commercial pilot, you have to take a test, what's known as a Part 107 exam to operate commercially. And why is it Part 107? Well, Part 107 describes the section of the FAA rules that govern drone usage in the United States. Okay, so let's start here. Go over some basic drone components. I guess we could show one here. This drone form factor is about as well, as basic as it gets. This is probably one of the more popular form factors. You have 4 props, also known as a quadcopter. You have a battery. You have a camera, and the camera is attached to what is known as a gimbal that suspends it and keeps it stable during flight. And all around the drone, we have a bunch of sensors, and I'm not sure how easy it will be to see. You can see one here, right in the middle, one here on the bottom, and bottom side as well. And these sensors are for what's called obstacle avoidance. And this is a feature that you'll see on most all of DJI drones. It is a vision system that will keep you and your drone safe, basically. So if you're flying your drone, say near a building or a tree or any obstacle for that matter, those sensors will have a keep out area, and you can actually define that keep out area, whether it's 3 meters or any distance really. So you don't run the risk of crashing your drone or colliding with anything really. And so those are some of the basic components of the drone. Another important thing to mention too is all modern drones now, even for hobbyists, all have GPS modules inside them too. And we'll probably get a little more into that later on. And so, but that is definitely worth mentioning as a major component of a drone. see, let's get into a little bit of drone safety. So there's some basic rules to know at a high level when using a drone. And one of the most basic of all is the flight ceiling. A lot of people think when they buy a drone that they can fly it wherever they want, and that's not true. Drones have a flight ceiling that's deemed by the FAA at 400 feet, nothing more. The beauty of some of these modern drones, especially the DJI drones, is you can actually set that flight ceiling so that you cannot exceed it by accident. So drones can fly at a height of 400 feet, and planes and helicopters can fly at a minimum of 500 feet, giving a 100-foot buffer of safety between the two things. And it's very important to adhere that. Drone fines are not fun, and they're very expensive. Other things to consider in drone safety is flying over crowds. There are some exceptions, very few, but the general rule of thumb is to just not do it. And it's important to point out too that there's a lot of common sense that goes into flying a drone, and you can just imagine what you don't really want to do with the drone to maintain this drone safety we're talking about. Other things to consider too is even though that drones are regulated under the FAA, which is a federal organization, that there are state and local guidelines too. Not a lot, but there are guidelines. One example might be, say, in Massachusetts, there are certain state parks that they are not allowed. In fact, most state parks, they're not allowed at this time, which for some of us photographers and videographers, it's not fun, because some of our state parks are just beautiful, and they're just asking to have pictures taken. So yeah, and that would be for some of the local guidelines, and one of the big ones too. And this is what's kind of pushing some of the drone laws, are people that kind of fly drones in a rogue sort of way over stadiums, and this is a big no-no. Comes with very, very high fines, and some other things too, like safety equipment. So typically on a commercial job, you would wear a helmet, standard helmet, and also a safety vest. Now this one I picked up actually shows the person that's nearby me that I am a licensed commercial pilot and to not disturb me. And the reason for that is operating a drone requires a lot of concentration. And you could have one out of 6 or 7 things going on at once when you're controlling the drone, whether it's controlling the actual drone, controlling the camera, and all its different parameters. Again, using basic common sense with drone safety is a must. And you want to practice this in whether you're flying recreationally or commercially. You will gain a great reputation if you just do things right from the beginning, and don't fly dangerously and don't fly to endanger others. I guess another thing in drone safety too that's kind of overlooked is battery safety. This is a typical battery of a DJI drone. There's a battery indicator, a connector, and it looks pretty basic. But in terms of safety, if I can show from the side, it looks rather flat on the bottom. And this is very important because on an aging drone, or an aging battery rather, when a battery starts to age, or even in some cases becomes defective, you'll get a bulging effect that basically says that this battery is no good and should no longer be used, and you don't want that drone in the sky with that battery in it. And so it's important, as part of this safety we're talking about, to keep a log of your battery usage and how many cycles you use them. I won't get too much in detail in those types of logs, but it is definitely worth looking into, because this can be a big problem. After all, the battery powers the drone. We don't want that falling out of the sky. Another important thing with drone safety, and this is probably one of the biggest rules in drone flight, is flying to what they call, or what the FAA deems as, the line of visual sight. The drone has to be within your line of sight at all times. And if it isn't, you're required to have someone that can do or have a spotter, and someone that can actually observe the drone for you, but also stay in radio communication with you as the operator. A lot of times in a drone inspection situation, you may be inspecting a large piece of equipment where the drone becomes invisible to you. It goes beyond where you can even see, or behind something. And that's where you want to have what's called the visual observer at your disposal. And they are going to be your eyes for you. So again, this is another safe practice to keep in mind when operating a drone. And let's see. So the next section we'll go over is some of the basic flight principles of drones. In a typical drone, we say this is a pretty typical design, is also known as a quadcopter, 4 rotors. Each rotor is powered by a motor independently, all of which, when started, all props will start at the same time. It will not fly, it will just start. And as the rotors increase in speed, creates lift, and therefore goes up, and you're in flight mode at that point. There are also other types of drones. So most drones that we know, or sort of what are synonymous with drones, are quadcopters. And but there's also octocopters with 8 props. And there's also fixed wing drones, all of which are all unmanned. I guess we can go over some of the differences. Basic differences are, quadcopters are sort of the most popular of drones, but an octocopter would be found probably more in an enterprise or an industrial inspection situation. And why 8 props? 8 props offer increased stability, better maneuverability, and also there's a lot of redundancy just inherent to having 8 props. If one prop fails, or a motor for the prop fails, the other ones can compensate. And now you don't have a drone falling out of the sky and risking someone's safety. Unfortunately, on a drone quadcopter, you don't have that kind of redundancy. A fixed wing drone, maybe the fact that some can glide. And we could talk a little bit more. Fixed wing drone, what is that? It is more in the shape of a plane, hence the name fixed wing. And this would be used in large inspections of, say, crops, or how do we want to say here? LiDAR, or surveying is the word I'm thinking here. Surveying large acreage and recording boundaries of the survey. And that's what you would use a fixed wing for. And generally better battery flight times as well. Let's see. And I guess some of the other flight principles would be GPS assisted drones are the different modes that these drones fly at. As we say, we use these for photography, videography, inspections, surveying. And a lot of these drones have different modes, which may change the speed or the overall behavior of the drone. One mode you see commonly with DJI drones is called cinematic mode. And this is for the folks that like to shoot videography. It's a slower speed mode, and it has a smoother sort of transition to say when you turn the drone, it doesn't stop abruptly, giving you a smoother shot and video. And then there's the normal mode, which you would normally take off in and fly to your destination or various waypoints. And sport mode, hence the name, is usually an enhanced speed mode. Let's see, now go over some of the parts of the drone controller. This is the DJI Smart Controller. This is my main controller. It's designed to be paired and operate quite a lot of the DJI line of drones. Not all. They market them, the drones, in recreational and also for enterprise applications. And that's kind of where the division is. This would be more for the prosumer. So what you have here on the left is your speed control or your throttle control, going up, going down, yawing left and right, and also your pitch control. You can pitch forward, pitch back, roll left, roll right. And those are your basic drone controls. The top here is the antenna, which basically operates like your Wi-Fi at home. It operates on a dual band, two frequencies, 2.5 and 5.8 gigahertz. And another feature that's common to a lot of these drones is this button called the RTH, or return to home. And what that means is this is a button where you can conveniently press and it will go back to its starting point that was deemed by your GPS. And this makes it safe and very convenient to get back, especially get back to your home point when drone is running low on battery. There are also additional controls in the front. There is a start and stop video button, camera button, and then there's also a dial that controls the aperture of the camera, and also another control that controls the pitch of the camera on the gimbal. And as you can see, it also comes with a nice 5.5-inch screen, and you can monitor your 4K video or high resolution photos to this. And this makes for a great tool, especially when you have a client that wants to see the perspective that what you're showing at. You can not only watch the drone yourself, but you can actually show your customer exactly what they're getting. So this is a great tool in terms of not only control, but something that your customer really will enjoy themselves. So that covers some of the basics of flying and the control. Some of the questions that some people may ask as far as, and this goes back a little bit to drone safety, ties in with this basic flying segment, is another common sense consideration, which is flying conditions. Common sense would say, don't fly in a high wind day. What's a high wind? Well, I would say anything above 50 knots. Now, this comes with a lot of considerations. Can you fly in wind? Yes. If you're a novice, you probably shouldn't. people who are, highly experienced at flying drones know how to compensate for wind and turbulence, though I don't recommend it. But the drone I just showed you, which is the DJI Mavic 2 Pro, has a compensation feature, and that will handle wind gusts up between 45 miles per hour and over 50 miles an hour. So that's a great feature. And it's a feature you can rely on, but not as a novice. And another common sense point I would make is something of a smaller form factor, which is this smaller DJI Mini. DJI has a whole series of these, from a consumer cost-effective model to a pro model like this. And they're all pretty much the same form factor, which has a camera, gimbal, assembly, some obstacle sensing here, and 4-rotor quadcopter. This, in a common sense situation, will not work well on a windy day. You will see a considerable amount of drift. You will be watching it in the sky, and when you look back down at your controller, for whatever reason, and look back in the sky, this drone will be almost out of sight. It will drift that far. It does not have very good wind compensation features. And we can cover some drone maintenance, which is on some of these smaller consumer or prosumer models is very little. You definitely want to consider, like we talked about before, the battery usage, battery bulging, keeping a flight log of how much usage your batteries have. And also in terms of maintenance, these drones have air intakes that are designed to cool the drone. And these are on each side, these fins that take in air, cool the drone gets rather hot. And with that, takes in lots of dirt and dust, and that is the enemy of any electronic device. So taking a air gun and blowing it out is a wise consideration. And also moisture. Moisture also can be a big factor, especially if you're working in a place down south like I had done recently. Moisture and humidity is a huge consideration, and definitely not a friend of any electronics. So those are some major considerations for your drone maintenance. And also, actually, this is probably one of the more obvious ones, is the overall condition of your propellers. Any one of these, say you're landing in a field and you're landing in tall grass, this thing becomes essentially a lawnmower. It may not even damage the props, but it is definitely important to inspect them before every flight. So that covers both safety and maintenance considerations. They're relatively cheap, and they can be replaced very easily, and we'll go over that a little later. Another topic we briefly touched on is probably one of the bigger industries for drones, and probably one of the more accessible ones is drone photography or videography. And we have a few people here that are enthusiasts and that are professionals as well. What would this facilitate? Absolutely helps in the real estate market. This is huge and highly competitive. Every real estate agency wants a drone operator. In fact, most agencies now have a pool of operators that they can pull an operator out of at any time to use to take pictures of homes or businesses alike and get that great aerial perspective. And so that would say that is the biggest industry at this point. And let's see, the next section will go over flight planning, navigation. This is important, especially for commercial pilots. And this could very well run into a lot of considerations when you do take your Part 107 course. And is more directly related. You won't deal with this more in terms of your flight planning and navigation as a hobbyist. However, it is good to have a general plan of how, where you're going to operate your drone for safety's sake. But as a commercial operator, you are almost always planning flight routes. And one example of that is a person who's doing surveying. Surveying takes a lot of planning, and it also takes a lot of planning on the actual controller. We have software now that we have on these controllers that you can actually map out emissions, and you can run them completely autonomously. Especially in surveying and inspection. And so that is one huge consideration in your planning and navigation. Another one too, and this would be covered in the Part 107 exam, one of the big considerations we talked about earlier, the flight ceiling of a drone, which is 400 feet, and for planes and helicopters being at a minimum of 500 feet. However, with the military, they have right of way of pretty much at any altitude. And what you will be, what you will study are what's called sectional maps. Sectional maps actually show you not only airport jurisdictions and their classes, but also military routes. Where I live, I happen to live across the street from an airport. It's a low class airport, meaning that it's not that it's a bad or low class airport. There is a class system, the way airports are rated. Low class meaning that I can actually fly my drone near the airport, not at the airport, in what's called situational awareness. And meaning I need to be an observer. I need to see and use that common sense. Observe if there's planes in the area. Observe if planes are taking off and landing. And you certainly don't want to fly near the airport, but you don't require what's called a operational authorization. On any other class airports like B, C, or D, you will require an authorization. Otherwise, you have no business flying a drone near an airport. It's highly dangerous. And again, the fines are extremely steep. I guess we could talk a little bit more about that. And there's a lot of legal and ethical considerations in this topic. When you do study for your test, you're going to learn about all these different considerations, and there are many when flying your drone, airports being the biggest one, but also the ethical considerations of flying a drone. For instance, you don't want to spy on your neighbor with your drone. You want to respect their privacy. It's very important. I live in a normal residential neighborhood, but when I fly my drone around, I do it with respect to everybody else. I don't want to cause alarm. I don't want to cause any paranoia. And drones can inherently bring that to people who don't know a lot about drones. And one of those ethical considerations is spying on people, spying on folks that have pools, that are swimming in them, looking in their windows. This is just common courtesy, and you just don't want to do it. And even though I take the utmost in my planning considerations, I've run into situations where people have blamed me for spying on them, when that was not even the case and had no interest whatsoever. I had a case where I was doing a promotional video for a local business, local restaurant, had full authorization from the owners to be on their property, to operate the drone and do photography and videography. And within minutes, I had a phone call come in from the owners saying that someone had been complaining that I was spying on them. This, of course, caused a lot of alarm for me because it was not even something that was within my consideration of doing. But drones can cause a lot of paranoia with people, and this should be expected. Anytime you're flying around somebody, you want to make them feel comfortable. Before any sort of confrontation can arise, let the person know what you're doing. Let them know what your job is. Make it their business. And you will see that you will get a far more positive response from the people that are around you. And I can assure you that is a great way of doing things. Okay, some of the emerging applications for drones. Now we hear about drones; they're ever present now, and they have applications for everything. And there may be some things that are surprising. One of the more emerging things that we hear now are delivery drones, and we will probably see those in the not so distant future. We hear about Amazon using them. We hear about CVS using them. There are countries that actually deliver pharmaceuticals, medications to folks in remote areas by using drones and dropping them by a parachute onto their property, which in many cases is great and it's relatively safe. And if a person is reliant on a particular medication, they can get it rather quickly. So that's definitely an emerging application that you're going to see in the future. Some applications that you may not even think of are with using drones with agriculture. Believe it or not, drones now are equipped with special cameras that are known as multispectral cameras that can actually monitor crop health if the crops are diseased. I have a close associate out in Western Mass that uses drones to inspect some of the flooding that we've experienced in recent times in Massachusetts, and helping farmers observe the damage from an aerial perspective. So these are some of the more emerging applications you're going to see in the future, other than, say, videography and photography. And this kind of leads me into some of the emerging drone technologies. We talked a bit about the different types of drones. There's always improvements to drones, especially in the obstacle avoidance systems and the software that drives them. Also, a slowly emerging advancement is battery life. It is the thing that every drone operator is limited to. And unfortunately, most batteries don't last very long. No matter what drone you get, you're still limited to the battery technology. We are now looking towards big corporations like, say, Tesla as an example, as a company that, on top of what they already do, pushing batteries and their technology and their capabilities to last longer. And we all hope for this, whether it's Tesla or someone else that does it. We all want to keep our drones up in the air as long as possible. And in terms of commercial operations, time is money. More time in the air is better. And for the most part, the drones I've shown so far are pretty good on batteries. The smaller drone like this is roughly 25 minutes. The specification on it is about 31 minutes. It usually never, sadly, last that long. And a battery like this is closer to a half hour and has probably a higher rating, but never seems to get that far. We also use a drone. A different application we can talk about is for thermal inspections, or thermal sensors rather. Another drone we have is of the same form factor of this DJI Mavic. However, it is outfitted with a visual inspection camera, a zoom lens, a laser rangefinder, and also a thermal sensor. And what kind of applications can that type of sensor serve? Most common is solar inspections. Now you can do fully autonomous inspections of solar arrays that are acres long in minutes. And you can do it fully autonomously. And with a thermal camera or thermal sensor, it's easy to find defective solar cells within a solar array from a high perspective. The thermal sensor also comes in handy with municipalities like substations. What it can do is sense, different than, say, night vision. A thermal sensor detects heat or a thermal print or a heat print. In the case of a substation or electrical substation, you will be able to sense what they call hotspots. When a power station or substation is loaded down, say during the summer, you can actually detect the junctions of where wires meet and see where the actual hotspots are and avoid costly shutdowns of a power grid. This is extremely useful, and we actually do electrical inspections as well. They are rather complicated. Unlike a normal image, which would be usually a photo is usually in the form of a JPEG. On a thermal image, it would be a JPEG R, and what that means is this type of picture holds what's called radiometric data. It'll actually show pixel perfect or pixel specific accuracy of temperature measurements, meaning each pixel will represent a temperature measurement, and you can get highly accurate readings. However, on the image itself, you don't actually see that data. It's not until it's processed in post. So not only does it require a drone that has a thermal sensor, but also software that can interpret the image for that type of inspection. Okay, so another segment that's worth explaining are drone simulators. They come in a few different forms. They're not widely used, unfortunately. They are a great tool to get experience with drones and in an extremely safe way of going about getting into the drone field. I myself, when I bought my first drone, I didn't use it for a month and a half. I was intimidated by it. And drones can inherently be intimidating just by their sound and their quick maneuverability. But after that month and a half, I decided I want to make friends with my drone. So I did. And again, I'm a drone enthusiast, so I love flying them, but I probably could have benefited from trying out one of these drone simulators. And not only does it simulate the flight of the actual drone, but it simulates the environment around it. So as we spoke of before, when a drone takes off, it creates this sort of vortex of wind or turbulence the props generate, and actually will, in some cases, destabilize the drone unless you continue to sort of move in an upward direction. and that these drone simulators can actually simulate not only this turbulence or wind turbulence that you'll experience while in the air, but also other different ground effects from temperatures. So this is a great way and a risk-free way of getting into drones is starting with drone simulators, and you can get them from DJI, and they actually make apps that you can operate on your phone as well, which are not as sophisticated, unfortunately, as one that you'd be using on your computer. Let's see. So some resources as well. Okay. Some different considerations. Okay, you say we want to start from the beginning and you want to buy a drone. Well, like we said earlier, they're readily available now. You can buy most any recreational or prosumer drone right on Amazon. And you want to take some considerations as to what you want to do with the drone. Do you just want to fly it for fun, casually? Do you plan on starting a business? Either way, you want to practice, whether it's with a drone simulator or the actual drone itself, and practice it in a safe environment, maybe your backyard or a large field, maybe not in a public park where there are people around. Some of the other considerations we talked about in the beginning too is taking the Part 107 exam. And this will require a lot of preparation. I am not going to lie. It is not an easy test, but it is very doable. And if you're committed to studying, you will pass your exam. I believe it's a 88 or higher on the exam. When I took the exam, it was highly monitored. You were in a room with other people taking the exam. You were monitored by camera, by audio, and this is designed so that you couldn't cheat on the exam. And this was a good thing. Now things have changed, and now it's much more convenient. You can actually take your Part 107 online, and you can take your recreational exam as well. And it's also worth mentioning that in the future, the Wachusett Business Incubator here will be starting a study exam or somewhere in the spring of 2024. We'll go over all the different points of the exam. It's highly detailed. I will tell you that it is mainly focused on what's called sectional maps. These maps will not only be used by you in flight planning, safety considerations, but they're also used by everyday pilots. And the reason that this exam is so difficult is that you're essentially sharing or potentially sharing the airspace with everyday pilots. And they want you to be knowledgeable of the things. The FAA wants you to be knowledgeable of the same things or similar things as everyday pilots do. And this is very important, and it's all tied to safety. So we placed a lot of emphasis on safety today. Personally, for me, I enforce that in my recreational flying for fun or in my everyday business practices. And I feel that everyone should too. It benefits all of us. It keeps these regulations of operating drones to a minimum as well. So if we all play ball, play by the rules, and operate drones in a safe environment, then we don't have to be subject to more and more regulations year after year. And so with that said, I hope everybody operates their drone safely in the future. And I guess at this point we can open up to any questions.
You also want to show your big boy?
Yeah, that's right. Actually, we do. We have not only two small form factor sort of everyday drones, but we have a special drone here that is worth showing off, and it is rather large. So I briefly mentioned, not sure if we're going to get that in full frame here.
I can pull it out.
You can?
Yep.
Okay. This drone is an American-made drone. It is not a DJI drone. It's made by a company called Whisper, who are located in Mississippi. They are part of a very large onset of American drone manufacturers. There is a reason for this. Using this type of drone, as the United States government now has deemed foreign drones and the use of them in any type of government application unusable. And the government has created what's called the Blue List. And this is an approved list of American-made drones that can be used for government applications. So I would not be able to go into sort of a government facility with this type of drone for any sort of inspection purposes. And there are a lot of reasons for this, but I'm not going to get into them right now. However, this drone here, this Whisper drone, is fully capable and allowed to be used. This drone is what would be called an enterprise level drone. I might have mentioned earlier. This is more for the commercial work, for industrial inspections, for surveying, photogrammetry, LiDAR imaging, and just like the other drones, they're same basic components. There's a GPS antenna. There's an array of sensors that go all around here for obstacle avoidance. It is a quadcopter. The whole chassis of the body is all made by carbon fiber, so it's relatively light and portable. A battery compartment for a rather large battery, which I do not have with me at the moment, but large and heavy. And it actually collapses down into a pretty compact form when we're transporting it. And like some of these applications we talked about, it also carries a payload underneath. And in this case, there is a shoe or a mount that one of these payloads can be connected to. Some of those payloads may be a gimbal assembly that holds a DSLR camera for inspection purposes. Also a LiDAR payload, which is what this drone is primarily used for. And these payloads are rather heavy, but this drone can do the job, and it's highly versatile. One thing that's worth mentioning about this drone is, and with a lot of the drones I mentioned previously, is the fact that there's a certain amount of AI built into the software. For this drone, we talked about wind, and that being a part of our planning and a part of safety considerations. Wind being a big one. The AI in the software of this drone is pretty amazing. It actually aids and the compensation of how to self-stabilize in a windy situation. Now, this drone was used in an inspection recently down the coast of North Carolina at a phosphate facility. And we were inspecting a rather large conveyor system that moves the phosphate from one part of the facility to the other. The length of this conveyor was a quarter mile long. It's very long. Again, this is where drones come in. This is a very hostile environment in terms of airborne sand, the extreme heat, extreme ground effects, and being on the coast, very windy. And this drone handled it exceptionally. It was a joy to use. And we inspected the entire conveyor system in just over a day and a half with the full quarter mile, and every aspect of it, the top, the bottom, the sides of every section of the conveyor. And we used a Sony camera payload that was mounted to a gimbal assembly to do the inspection. So that's what this drone is for. Again, this is what would be in a class called enterprise drones for industrial applications.
What's the top ring of those sensors?
Right here, this here, yep. This is a sensor array. That's an omnidirectional. So unlike on some of the previous drones I was showing that actually have sensors right on the bottom, here, this does not have that. What it does is it relies on the way the field of view that the sensor has, which is essentially a cone. So this would be sort of the dispersion, and that would be the bottom sensor, I guess you could say too, and top sensor rather as well.
And you'd use a different camera as a payload.
Yep. Yeah, I don't have that payload here, but it does. You can mount a DSLR body and lens to it, and then the controller actually has the full functionality. So you can control your ISO, you can control your aperture, your shutter speeds, and it's great. It's actually a pleasure to fly, and it makes your life easy. And if anybody was curious about an industrial inspection, a typical inspection of any kind can be done with the drone, and you can have a live video feed for, say, the actual inspector. So you yourself, if you're not doing the inspection yourself, you may have a, say, structural engineer that's working alongside you, and he wants to see video in real time, and he wants video evidence recorded and also photo evidence or stills. And that's what this drone does very well. And so with a lot of controllers now, some of the DJI ones, and also the controller for this drone have an HDMI output, and you can run an HDMI cable to a large monitor, and that way an inspector or an engineer can see everything crystal clear in real time as it's recording all the data, which you'll be able to evaluate later on. So this is an extremely useful tool, and a time saver and a money saver.
Cool. Oh, did you want to take questions?
Sure,
now?
if there are any questions.
Right, let's see. Our guest, do you have any questions?
I have one.
Certainly, go right ahead.
What does a drone that you're standing with now cost?
That seems to be the most popular question. This particular drone is the Whisper Ranger Pro. And I believe this base model is $25,000. What's crazy to some people to know is some of the payloads that it carries, like the LiDAR payload we spoke of actually exceeds the cost of the drone. The LiDAR payload is over $30,000. So it can get very costly.
What, another question, what drone would you recommend that somebody that wants to start flying, just for fun?
I would say that this DJI Mini series is a great way to start. And not only is it a great starter drone, but it comes with a very high quality camera right on board. You can record 4K video. You can shoot high resolution photos, raw photos for the professional folks out there. And the battery life's great. The cost is relatively low. There's three different models for the series. I think this is the DJI Mini series. So there's the Mini CE, I think is the most cost effective. I think that's around $300. And also it's worth mentioning too, in that cost is they'll come with a controller that unlike the other controller, it doesn't have an embedded screen. It uses your cell phone or smartphone as your screen. Yeah, for around $300, you can get a fantastic drone, depending what you want to use it for.
I have another question.
Sure.
I am now studying for my test.
Oh, great.
Any areas that I should really work hard on, or just all together?
Yes, I would say sectional maps. You will see this or hear this from people that have already taken it in some of the study guides that have been posted on YouTube. Because a lot of people ask, what am I going to expect on this exam? And that is a big one, sectional maps, which covers a lot of the keep out areas at airports, flight ceiling, safety, but sectional maps is definitely a biggie. And if you're interested, as a free resource, YouTube's a fantastic resource. I pretty much only used YouTube and the various different videos out there to study. I mean, I did a lot of reading, but some of the videos are just really pinpoint some of the actual questions you're going to get on the exam, believe it or not.
Excellent. Well, thank you.
If you just another note, one of those videos is done by a guy named Tony Northrup. Him and his wife have a channel. He's a professional photographer, drone operator. I don't know the name of the video, but if you look up Tony Northrup, drone or Part 107 study guide, he has one of the most popular ones, and I found it to be really, really helpful. I think he's based in Connecticut too. Yep.
I actually did see that video, and it was very good. I actually sent away for some reading material, so I'm working hard at it. And like you said, the sectional charts are very confusing. Yeah,
it's definitely it's kind of scary to say. Yes, it is going to be one of the things you're going to see a lot of on the test. But I would say, yeah, focus on it, and it's not impossible. You'll do it. And I don't know if my contact information's out there, but you're welcome to contact me if you're in touch with Magnus or any of the folks here.
Okay, that's good. I really want to thank you guys for doing this. I think it opened the drone world up to a lot of people that just want to get into it. And I will be watching anytime you do these again.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ed. We have another question here from our studio audience.
Oh,
and it was something that you covered a while ago. And it says, was that 400 feet above sea level? And is there an indicator on the drone to give you levels? And I know you weren't talking about this drone at the time.
That's a great question. And yes, the drone controller or the controller with the phone screen, the software will feed back to you your altitude at all times, and it's very accurate. So yeah, you will, and you can actually set a threshold as to how high the drone will go, and it will actually stop at that level. So if you set it at 400, it may stop at like 388 or something like that, so it doesn't overshoot.
Excellent.
But yeah, definitely a safeguard it's in most all these controllers. Also, it will also regulate the distance as far as it can go now. I ran into that recently. I've never actually had that as a problem, but I did a shoot up at the hairpin turn up at
North Adams.
North Adams area, and it's so vast. I got way out to get the shot, and it actually said you've gone too far, and it stopped. So it's a safeguard built into the controller.
Nice.
Yeah.
Any other questions from our studio audience? Okay.
Yeah.
Ed, do you have anything else online?
Well, I would like to say I've been messing around with my drone, doing a few shots here and there. And one of the greatest things I found in my drone is that when you run out of battery, it comes back if you're within distance, and it lands approximately right where you took off from. So maybe people would like to hear a little on that.
Yep, I can definitely elaborate on that. Now, do you mind me asking what kind of drone you have?
I have a Spark, a DJI Spark.
Oh, okay. So that is a feature that we briefly mentioned earlier called RTH. That's the function, stands for return to home. And you can set that as well in your options to say, to trigger that at a particular battery level. For instance, I set mine at like 25%, the lower threshold. So once the battery gets to 25%, it says, okay, you're this far away, time to come home. And like you said, lands automatically, which is a real lifesaver, compensates for the distance and the speed it needs to travel. And this drone does that as well. And I found this out the hard way on that very inspection job we were talking about earlier. I had never, it was the first time flying this drone for this company I work for. And the company had been having some issues with the controller itself overheating. And it did in fact overheat, and the controller shut down. And I was watching the drone, and it paused for a moment and came home all by itself. It landed, I'd say, within a couple of a meter and a half of where the takeoff point was. It was great. And my heart stopped racing at that point. Some of these situations, I guess, is also that can bring on a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of money at hand, safety concerns,
Was that the scariest moment you had?
I have a kind of a funny one that was scary and funny. I did a job for a local excavation company, and I'll take responsibility for this one. Now, funny, it is part funny, part serious. These drones are not cheap. The company was doing excavation, and they were sorting out metal from bricks, from wood. And when the excavator operator was lifting up a rather large amount of metal scrap, my drone was directly below it, trying to get that great shot. And now I didn't anticipate flying the drone under there. What had happened was the drone shot consisted of me flying towards the excavator, so you could see it in the full frame, but under his arm. So under the actual excavator arm, so you could see the name of the company. Where the drone ended up, however, was when he rotated the excavator and pile of metal, and then proceeded to drop the metal on top of this seemingly little drone, crushing it. The operator actually saw it, felt bad, offered to pay for it, and I took full responsibility for it. There was no one hurt. There was no, there were no real issues other than a little bit of pride hurt. And luckily, I carry insurance with my drones. That's actually another thing I probably should have talked about. I might have skipped over a page.
Okay.
It's worth getting drone insurance anytime you're doing a commercial job. and it is super convenient. It's all app driven now. You can purchase a policy within a minute, literally, maybe even quicker. The last electrical inspection I did, I was able to pull a $2 million coverage insurance on a drone inspection because it was at a substation. And I just couldn't take the risk, and you never should take the risk of not getting insurance. That app is called Skywatch AI. And if you do get into any sort of commercial situations, you're going to have it. Your customers are going to demand it anyway.
Do you purchase it per job?
Yeah, per job. And it's cheap. I mean, to purchase $2 million worth of coverage was probably $15. And that's for an hour, maybe an hour and a half. So, well, maybe in the scope of things, it's not cheap, like for a policy, say for a year, but you probably save more if you purchase for like a whole year, but jobs vary from types, job to job. So yeah, drone insurance is important. And there's also, it's worth mentioning too, that the drone insurance that covered my crushed drone was not from Skywatch AI. It's a separate insurance that's typically provided by the drone manufacturer, in this case, DJI, for, I'm trying to think how much I paid for this drone. Probably maybe $150, and they do charge a deductible of like $127. So I mean, for $277 to replace a drone versus, I don't know, $1,200, $1,400 is far worth it, in my opinion, and that's per year.
All right. Now, what was your coolest job?
Well, the most recent one was a lot of fun. Shot some video and photos up at the hairpin turn in North Adams, Massachusetts. I did a ton of planning, watching foliage online to make sure it was at peak, monitoring the weather. You can never plan too much. When I got there, it was cloudy. Said it was going to be sunny all day, but the results were great. I was really happy with the images. I ended up doing like an HDR composited type thing with multiple shots. And for me, doing photography, that was a step up. So yeah, that was most rewarding, I think. Fun.
I'd love to see that.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I don't do a great job of keep my website updated, unfortunately, but I should post some of this stuff.
If you have some of the video, we can put it right in the show if you want.
Oh yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah. I'd be up for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was definitely fun.
Now, did you go right up, or did you, like, it's kind of on a cliff too. Did you go out?
Yeah. I shot less video on this trip, which is strange because I mainly do video. But I really wanted to focus on my photography skills a little bit better because I just felt like they were lacking, and I was becoming a little too dependent on like the post-processing stuff. So I wanted to shoot not only that HDR technique, but really tweak the manual settings to my advantage. So yeah, it was more. There is some video. I shot that in the log format, the video log format, which is like the black color profile.
Mm-hmm.
So that's heavily dependent on post-processing. So when I do that, yeah, I would love to share that.
Okay.
I'm pretty proud of that. But in its very nature, the flat profile is just boring to look at until it's processed. So yeah.
What would you recommend drone operators try to work on with their skills? Notice go out and you get a couple smooth seconds, you have to stop, and you want that continual smoothness, right?
In terms of videography.
Yeah.
Okay, I would say when we were talking about how important practice is earlier, practice in a safe environment, just to start. I know I'm super preachy about this, but it makes not only other people feel safe, but you feel safe. You don't have to worry about someone walking into your shot or, risking, the drone colliding into them. But as far as, you mean like techniques, believe it or not, your thumbs, as they're controlling that drone, will fatigue like any muscle if you hold them in a fixed position for long enough. And that takes a lot of practice. So one way I would say to get a smooth shot is to see if your drone has a mode, a particular cine mode, as some of them call them, which will offer you a slower control speed, but you can also control different parameters of the way the drone behaves when it comes to a stop. So there's a drift factor when it stops. You can increase that drift factor so it actually just comes to a slow stop versus an abrupt stop. And that makes some of those, those transitions really smooth. And you can tweak any of those parameters on most any of your DJI controllers. That's one of those features a lot of people don't talk about, but that is one of the keys to getting a smooth shot. And then also experimenting is what I love to do. I'm also a musician, so I love experimental stuff. Like, I just love the very nature of it and trying new things. So experimenting with the drone too and its limitations. I think all too many times when we're controlling the drone, you get tense. You're aware of everything that's around and worrying if you could hurt somebody or yourself, rather than focusing on the actual shot. So it's easy to look at the drone in the distance versus, say, doing what you probably should do is look at it on the controller, but also keeping spatial awareness for safety reasons, right? But practicing with that screen and how the drone behaves is another real big consideration. Yeah.
And then what you brought up earlier with having a spotter. So let's say you're out alone, and we've all been there, right? And you get, you're looking at your controller, it's up there.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden,
Out of sight.
where is it?
I know.
And you have that heart stopping moment, even if you haven't drifted or that.
Mhm.
Do you have any advice for dealing with that?
I think that just comes with a lot of experience, because I still experience it to this day. And even on the inspection job I did with this recently, I try to remain extremely calm. But that comes with a lot of practice too. I can't just be calm. There's a lot of mental preparation for it, believe it or not. And preparing for situations like in that case, high gusts coming off the coast, relying on the drone's technology of compensating. When you start to put your trust into, say, the AI of the system, that brings the anxiety level down a lot. And that will definitely help with the overall performance of having lower anxiety. That's a real key. Excuse me.
Is that how a lot of drones get lost by beginners? They go up and they lose sight of it and start hitting the controls, and before you know it, it's in the woods.
You know what? I actually never thought of that. I think that it probably is. It's a very basic way of losing control of, or losing sight of a drone. Sure. Also, another thing that's a major consideration, I probably should have spoke about it, is what they call flyaways. And these are really bad. This is when the signal between the drone control and the drone is lost, and the drone doesn't know how to behave, and it continues on the path, and it's gone forever. And all you can think about is it going to hurt somebody? What are the fines that are associated with it, let alone the price of the drone and what you're going to lose in damage? Another great reason to have drone insurance for all those considerations, but flyaways are relatively uncommon. I've never had one, luckily, but a couple of ways that they can happen is flying too far, losing that transmission coverage from the drone control to the drone. And another situation that's even more rare, we were talking about electrical inspections. If you're flying, say, in between a transmission, a line or transmission distribution system, which are those, giant, you know what I'm talking about. You fly between any one of those phases, that can actually cause an interruption in the signal as well. You don't want to be doing that. You won't, there's really no reason for you to be in between any one of those wires for an inspection, because you can do that at an angle, the camera and the gimbal. But I have heard of situations where it will create an interference between the drone and the controller and cause a flyaway. That's pretty scary. So I haven't had that situation either, luckily.
Okay, any other questions? I think we're adequately grilled you here.
Hey, ready for more. Audience?
Thank you for showing us all these drones, Rob.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
It's an education, and we hope you come back and show us more sometime.
Yeah, I think in the future, we'll be seeing a Part 107 prep course in the spring of 2024. So that could be something to look forward to.
All right.
All right.
And hey, everyone, thanks for being with us today. And those who get to see our recording later, thank you for tuning in for this, and expect more drone expertise from Robert Barbarian and WBI in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
It's a pleasure.